What is up, Salami Squad around the world? It is your boys, Mike Richman in the cut. I am here with my guy this way instead, Jimmy G, and we are bringing you a little in the rink, and we're just gonna bust right into it. What you got for me this week, Jimmy?
All right, so let's start off like we usually do. Flyers news.
The boys.
So they are doing pretty bad. 3-4 in their last 7 games. It's been a mess all around. Just poor performances. They're pretty much relying on 4 or 5 players to score. They're relying heavily on Sean Couturier, which is great. I mean, Selkie Trophy winner, great defensive, offensive player. But you can't just – if he gets cold, it's going to be a rough start or rather rough go of it. Also defensively, they are very, very poor. Lots of holes. They constantly let pucks through the crease where you're not supposed to let pucks go through. They look sloppy. They don't look confident. The coach AV is trying to mix up the lines, but it's like, how much
do you think that's a good or bad move here? Like, when a team is struggling, should you try and mix up the lines, or do you just try to get more work in with them, make them, adhere a little bit better?
See, that's a really tough dilemma because at a certain point you got to build chemistry, right? I'm sure you know that certain lines have to have chemistry, but also with this, they're in a super tough schedule right now with the next, I believe 10 games. They won't have a break of more than 2 days. And so they can't practice for more than, I think, an hour or 2 hours. So there is lack of practice and lack of chemistry. But also it's they're lacking in a good second defenseman, because obviously you have Ivan Provorov and he's your anchor. He's the guy you want to build your team around. He's a defensive, he's a two-way defenseman, so he's really good on offense, but he's an excellent defender. And they're trying to find someone to fit with him on the first line. They've been switching out Gossespierre and Myers and Sanheim, but they really don't work well with him. I'll tell you what, Matt Niskanen was a player for us last year during the cup run, or the playoff run rather.
Yeah.
And he was on a 2-year deal and he retired. He pulled like an Andrew Luck, and that absolutely shattered the defense. I mean, the Flyers went from being the best team against shots on goals, that they let up the least amount of shots on goal last year, to being the second worst, letting up the second most shots on net.
Wow. And you think that's contributed to that one player change?
I think absolutely, because the only other player that has been moved around is Gossespierre, and he's had a great year, and you can't really blame him for that, because this is his first year playing a full season because he's been a healthy scratch. I mean, thank God for him though. I think he's an excellent player, excellent offensive defenseman. But he's coming off a year he didn't play that much, so I mean, you can't put that on him. But Niskanen was so good because him and Provorov held down that first line, and it's like, you can just see when Provorov moves up, Niskanen would slide back and cover the slot.
Just worked.
Yeah, it just they had chemistry. They could work together. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Also, their power play is absolutely abysmal. This is not just the defenseman's fault. Their power play is terrible. If I were the opposing team, I would play dirty as hell on the power play, because they cannot score. Against the Penguins in 3 games, they scored on 1 power play. I think they had
how many?
6.
Oh, shit,
it's really gross. They can't figure out how to put the puck in a good spot. I hear Flyers apologize. They're saying they're waiting for like the perfect pass, like the perfect play, but you got to get the puck on net. At a certain point, if it's not working, you just got to get the puck deep and throw shots on the goalie. None of these goalies, like Tristan Jarry or whoever who's playing for the Capitals, and Shesterkin, they're not stealing these games. They're not absolutely, like, a lot of times in hockey, a goalie can absolutely just rob a series or rob a game. These goalies aren't doing that. They're just making normal saves, and so I don't know. So you gotta figure something else out. So played a bad series against the Pens, obviously, and then we played against the Capitals for 1 game on, I think it was last Thursday, and got beaten. But that game, I'm not too sad about it. The Flyers have beaten the Capitals, I think, the past 4 straight games. So, like, statistically, the Capitals should have won.
Yeah.
By that time, they just got hot. The Capitals are a very hot team right now. And that game, the Flyers played well. I can't really fault anything besides just poor goaltending in certain spots. Elliott left in a few soft goals, but besides that, it was still a competitive game. They played against Buffalo the last game they played, and it was an excellent game. Really well played, except for the very first period where I mentioned this earlier. They dig themselves into a hole. They let up goals early in the game, and so you never want to play from behind. Almost every team in the league plays worse when they play from behind.
That's got to be a mental thing as well.
Exactly.
You're just behind, like you need a goal, and like hockey goals are just so hard to come by, bro. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and a lot of it's momentum. So like when you get scored on, it's not only just the deficit, but it's also your like you said, your confidence is shot. Your goalie gets in his head. Goalies are extremely weird people, and they have their special habits and whatnot. But you're right, especially when they go down more than one goal. But to see them climb back, they kept crawling for this game. Like they would score, the Sabres would score, they would score again. Buffalo would score twice.
Oh,
and
wow.
So another game where Carter Hart gets pulled, which is a very, very unsettling sign. He, again, has not played that well. I'll touch on him later. But that game, they force overtime and eventually go into a shootout, and they win it in a shootout. It was a kind of double-edged sword there because they let the punching bag of the league, Buffalo Sabres, absolutely run all over them for the first 3 periods.
Yeah.
And then they finally crawled back. But like I said earlier, with Carter Hart struggling, that is a very big key to why having 2 goalies is extremely important. Like you can have a stud, but you got to have a backup guy to carry the slack. Yep. And the Flyers actually, for the first time, and as long as I've been a fan, have 2 solid goaltenders. If you want to talk about the Eagles quarterback controversy, let's talk about the Flyers goalie controversy. They haven't had a good guy between the pipes in 10 years, besides Steve Mason. But that's a biased fan base thing. That's on me. I'll take the flack for that. I love Steve Mason. Can't fight me on that. But yeah, Carter Hart has not been playing too well. Again, I think it's a mental thing. I think that he knows he's in a slump, and it's the same thing with like confidence in any sport. Like with Carson Wentz, like he got that in his head that he isn't playing well. He thinks that things are going wrong for him. He could blame it on something else. But I think at this point, it's just a slump. Every goalie goes through a slump. Every goalie goes through a period of time where they aren't on their game. But I think that he goes to a sports psychologist often, and he has a really great goaltender coach. I think that this is just a slight bump in the road. I think teams are looking at his film and trying to figure out what's good against him, and he hasn't been on his game, but I think he'll figure it out. So let's get back into the full league standings. Tampa Bay Lightning at number 1. They are
expected, bro. Expected.
Fire. They are playing without their arguably best player in Nikita Kucherov, and they are just still absolutely dominating the league.
Damn.
A big part of that, of course, is their goalie, Vasilevsky. He is an absolute monster. I think he is my favorite goalie in the league besides Carter Hart, but favorite in terms of actual skill and dominance. I think he's the best. Number 2, we got Toronto. And this was inevitable. I mean, it's extremely hard, extremely difficult to keep the first place spot for the entire season. Yeah. I still think they're a great team in their division in the Canadian League. I think they're a great team.
Yeah.
And still, small sample size. I need to see them play against another team in the playoffs. I need to see them play some more defense. But still, a lot of firepower, a lot of weapons on that team, and a great goaltender in Frederick Bluetooth Anderson.
Oh yeah.
Number 3, we got Carolina, and I called this early on our first ever show. I said Carolina was about to be a powerhouse.
You did say that.
And now they're back on, or they're at the top now in 3rd place. Yeah. That team is just, they are lightning in a bottle this year. They are firing all cylinders. I think they have 2 or 3 guys in the top 10 of scoring for points and goals, which Spesh and Aho and Niederreiter. Yep, absolutely tearing it up. And they have 2 solid goaltenders, both below a 3-goal allowed average, which is huge. I think one of their goaltenders hasn't even broke 2, which is incredible. You want to keep that number low. Yeah. But Carolina is absolutely on fire, and it may be too early to call it, but I'm looking for them to be in the conference championship.
Oh, okay, talent. Jimmy, okay.
They have young talent, and they have great goaltending, and this team is primed. They're in a prime spot to win. Number 4, we got Florida. They're just consistent. I mean, what else can you say? They're just playing well. They got a great coach and great goaltending with Bobrovsky. They have solid depth scoring, and they know their game. They're a slow paced team. They're going to beat you on the forecheck. They're going to absolutely frustrate you on defense. And then when you're least expecting it, they're going to score. So, I mean, what can you say? They've been a top 5 team the entire series so far. So look for them to keep going, keep doing well. And finally, number 5, New York Islanders. That's impressive to me because they were in a tailspin at the beginning of the season. They lost the Flyers 2 games in a row, and it's surprising to me too. But they figured out their game. I mean, Matt Barzal. If you look up Matt Barzal's goal against, I think it was the Sabres. It was an absolute incredible goal, probably the goal of the year. He cuts in, it goes right in front of the net, and then gets 6 between his legs, and he snipes it. Man, it was.
You sent me that off air, Jimmy. That was insane.
It was a fantastic goal. I'm considering that to be my front runner for goal of the year. But
I mean, at this point, yeah.
I mean, we still got a lot of game.
True.
But in terms of their style of play, they're playing great defense. I mean, they got Barry Trotz, one of the best defensive-minded coaches in the league. He just knows how to scheme. You could put anybody, you could put me and you out there and still be able to probably stop maybe a couple of shots. But that team is just they figured the game out. So good for them. I mean, I hate them, but that's just the bias.
Respect where respect is due.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta respect the good teams. So my initial thoughts on the league standings at this point, it shows how dominant the East has become. The top 6 out of the top 10 teams in the league are all in the East Division. It used to be for years the big bad West. It was always Chicago, San Jose, the Predators, Golden Knights, Avalanche, and they've all been like, how can you go against these teams when they've been so good for so many years? But if you look at the stats right now, they're not the best. The Avalanche haven't cracked the top 10 yet, and that's like they are supposed to be Cup favorites this year. Like I keep harping on that, but
wow, that's
crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
And so so we saw from last time I was on was Edmonton finally dropped out of the top 5. So I don't think that this is a bad sign by any means. I think that they went through a really rough stretch. They played against Toronto in a 3-game series, and they got shut out in 2 of those games. And so in that Canadian division, it's so tight, and every team is – the top 4 teams are all really good with obviously Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and the Canadiens, and they're all battling – they're all fighting that for at least a top spot, maybe a top 2 spot if you're not going to beat Toronto. But I think that once you go on a rough stretch like that, it's tough to come back. But again, they have a good goaltender. They obviously have Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and so with those 2 players being literally the top 2 scorers in the league, it's like you're gonna have some success. And so I don't see them dropping at top 10 anytime soon, unless teams start figuring them out. I mean, that's obviously a possibility. Just watch the film and see how they play. But it's tough to shut down 2 absolutely top 5 players in the league. I think that's a tall task for any team. So let's go into my surprise team.
For sure.
Look at the teams that are surprising to me at this point. The Los Angeles Kings are in 18th place. That is 1 place behind the Flyers, and that's extremely, extremely surprising. That team was supposed to be in like a big rebuild. They've had veterans on that team since they won the Cup a few years ago, who just honestly haven't dropped. Anze Kopitar is an absolute monster centerman. He's been dominant in this league for 10 plus years. He's been an absolute monster. They got Jeff Carter, an ex-Flyer, who just he's father time. He's an old man, but he finally finds a way to get the puck in the net. He's transitioned more into a playmaker, but at the same time, he's just an excellent all-around. I think he's a winger at this point in his career. Jonathan Quick, their old goaltender, he's starting to pick up his game. And if you remember back in when the NHL players played in the Olympics, he was the USA goaltender that took us all the way to the finals. He always will be a favorite goaltender of mine in my book. I think that with that run,
dude,
that was fantastic. I remember watching that in high school, on the high school TV, in the cafeteria, seeing him play his heart out, especially during that the shootout against the Russians with TJ Oshie going back to back and scoring multiple times. That's some nostalgia.
That's just legendary sports. Yeah.
Another surprising little trait I see is obviously the Avs. The Avalanche have not cracked the top 10. That's incredibly like I can't figure out why. I mean, their goaltending is not the issue. Their goaltender Grubauer is still a stud. I think he's a top 5 goaltender, but he can't do it by himself. I mean, the Stars are not producing. McKinnon, their best player, I don't think he's cracked 6 goals yet, and that's like a huge letdown for a guy who's supposed to be a top 3 talent. Their Stars not produce. It's like I don't think this is a bad sign for them. I think they've been there before. They have the experience and the young talent with Kel McCarr on defense. But at the same time, early on, you got to figure out your game. Again, like, I keep harping on that, but you got to figure out what you got to be, and they don't know what they are yet. I mean, I just can't figure out why they haven't been producing. I mean, maybe it's early. They're in a tough division. I think they'll figure it out, but at the same time, it's a little concerning. And finally, the Minnesota Wild are absolutely on fire. This team, if you want to get into hockey, I would start watching the Canadian League first and then watch the Wild. The Wild are an electric team. They are so fun to watch. The goals they score are so unorthodox. They just score random slap shots from the blue line, great tic-tac-toe cross creases. But they are just a really great team to watch. They are in 11th place right now. And I have a great stat to show in a little bit. Let's go into the Money Puck line. So this is from moneypuck.com. This is a really, really informative website that I follow. They show the odds and bets against different teams. Toronto are the favorites to win the cup at this point. There is a big circle, like a little pie chart, and it shows how you can get your percentage chances to make the playoffs, second, third, fourth round, and then finally win the cup. Toronto is obviously in the lead with Tampa Bay Tampa Bay is in third for the percentage for who will be the cup. And the second place team is actually the Wild. This team, I don't know what Las Vegas has in these guys, but they think that they're going to win the cup. They think they're the second favorite to win the entire thing, and it's like to a team that's again supposed to be in a big rebuild. Like they still have veterans,
that's
and they
crazy.
have a great
I mean, that's just got to be personnel, Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I can't even think who their coach is off the top of my head. I mean, for years this team has just been mediocre. I mean, maybe a playoff berth. Maybe I don't even say a second round. Maybe give the first round team a couple bumps and bruises every once in a while. But at the same time, like they never been much of a threat. But they have the second highest odds to win the Stanley Cup this year, and they haven't been in the top 10 yet.
That's wild.
So keep your eye out on the Minnesota Wild. I think that they have they got something special. I don't know what it is, but who knows? And finally, I just want to wrap this up by saying that ESPN finally signed a deal to get a 7-year, multi-billion-dollar deal with the NHL. So get ready to watch games that are not in your market. Get ready to watch West Coast teams, Canadian teams. I personally cannot wait. This is going to be so exciting. They're going to be doing all their streaming on their – I think Disney Plus has a part of it. Obviously, Disney Plus owns ESPN Plus or whatever. But look for important playoff games to be not only on cable television, but the ESPN Plus streaming service. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
That's awesome.
I think this is absolutely wonderful for the league. We're finally going to get leagues exposure, and that's a point I made a few episodes ago. That you got to get people watching different games. You got to have more than just the same teams yourself in your market area to watch. I think it's great for the league, but the only issue I see here is for smaller radio or TV stations like NBC, SN, Universal. I think they're going to get shut down. So that cuts a lot of jobs, and that's tough because growing up watching NBC.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that ESPN will find a way to get all those anchors on air somehow. NHL.com has a really great streaming service, so I'm assuming they'll figure it out. But all in all, this is excellent for the league. This starts next season, so get ready to watch a lot more hockey and have a lot more fun. All right, that's all I got for today.
Hell yeah! No, that is an incredible deal, Jimmy. You said it there, because when we were first starting to get into this hockey talk, we were just talking about what are they going to do. They were in such a financial crisis. I mean, just the league in general just needed more income. So yeah, you're right. Hopefully this ESPN deal will pull through for them. We know it will. They're going to get the money. Hopefully we get the viewership up as well. But with that being said, we are going to be the fuck out of here. Thanks for stopping by, Salami Squad. Peace soup.
Perfect.